Did you think making Lego robots was going to be easy? I did. I built over 350 Lego robots and eventually I learned how to make them look and behave exactly the way I want. But it was a grind, and I really wish I'd known how to do it in a smarter way. So to make building and programming Lego robots much easier for you, here are 10 things I wish I'd known earlier that would save me a ton of time and frustration. Let's start with number 1. This is the first wall every Lego robot builder hits. You open the kit, you see a mountain of strange pieces and freeze. And usually it's because you think you're supposed to invent something original from nothing. When you're learning to draw, you copy real objects and other drawings first. Building Lego robots is just the same. When I built my cat robot, I looked for pictures of cats, grabbed the core body shapes from the Lego Tuxedo cat, and borrowed the idea of showing the eyes on the hub's display from the Lego Mindstorm's Robot Inventor kit builds. I almost never start from zero. That's the secret. Don't invent from scratch. Remix. I do that all the time, even from my own past builds. Because every time you borrow and tweak, you learn one new technique, and your next build gets easier. But it all starts with an idea. And when a good one hits, you've got to capture it fast before it fades away. Here's what I do. If I get a light bulb moment away from my studio or right before I'm falling asleep, I forget it by the time I sit down to build. And even if I remember it, going straight into the pieces with no plan is how I get stuck halfway through. So before touching a single Lego piece, I sketch. When I designed the cat, I drew rough volumes, motor placement, proportions, and which parts could do the job. I always carry a paper notebook with me. Old school, I know, but a quick drawing does 3 things. It locks in the idea, it forces the constraints early, and it clears mental space so you're not holding everything in your head while you build. A sketch gives you a plan, but if you don't understand how Lego Technic pieces work together, that plan falls apart the second you start building. If your robot geometry shifts every time it moves, you can write reliable code for it. So in my Spike Prime cat, designed to be played with by kids, I added beams bracing across multiple frames, locking the whole thing together, so that picking it up from any point doesn't cause anything to shift or fall apart. Like any sport, you have to know the rules to play well, and Lego Technic has rules. You should work inside the Lego grid, which determines hole spacing, how to properly mesh gears, and most important, how to brace parts of the build so forces don't pull them apart. Once you build by the rules, your robot stops being fragile and finally becomes stable enough to program. Now that you know how to build something solid, here's how you actually start building. The number 1 question I get is, how do you go from a sketch to a real robot? You've got the pieces in front of you and it's just a mess. Here's the first move. Pick one anchor piece from your sketch. The hub as the head, a big plate for the chest, the wheels to model the curled back legs, something that defines the overall size of the model. Put that on the table first. And this is why working with a single kit is a gift. Constraints force decisions. With a fixed set of parts, you're not choosing from infinite possibilities. You're solving a puzzle. You look at your sketch, grab the closest part that matches the shape, try it, swap it, try again. That's tinkering. And yeah, sometimes you hit a flow state and time disappears. But it isn't magic. It's practice and repetition. And the more you do it, the more often you reach that point where the build starts pulling you forward. You can train your creativity. And tinkering is the training. But it can also trick you into falling in love with a solution that doesn't actually work. Sometimes you build something clever, something you're proud of, and yet it makes you waste time, while the model still doesn't do what it needs to do. The hard part is admitting it. A good rule: if it doesn't work reliably 3 or more times, under real conditions, it's not done. For example, on my cat, the head is built around the spike hub, which is heavy. I initially mounted it directly on the motor shaft, and it simply couldn't lift to the straight up position consistently. I loved the solution, but it wasn't going to work. So I took a deep breath and took it apart by taking pictures of every step. I rebuilt it with a mechanism that could actually handle the load. The photos I took let me rebuild what was good about the shape while changing what wasn't working. Professional Lego designers can build multiple copies of the same subassembly and keep old versions intact while they explore new ones. Most of us can't. We need the parts back, so we photograph instead. If the new direction fails, you can go back, and if something in the old version was genuinely good, you can recover it. Think of photos as your undo button. So here's what I changed to fix the weak neck problem. I added gear reduction. I gear it down with a 3:1 ratio. That makes the motor turn 3 times lower, but it gives it 3 times more torque, more lifting power, and actually more control because the motor has to turn more to move the head by the same amount. Now, gears have a downside. They add a little bit of play. That small wiggle is called backlash. It means the head can move a tiny amount even if the motor isn't moving. But in this cat, that wiggle is actually useful. When you pet the head, it wobbles slightly, and that tiny movement is enough for the motor's rotation sensors to notice. But if you're building something like a driving base or a precise arm, you cannot ignore backlash. In fact, on a mobile robot, I'd do the opposite. If you want your robot to drive straight and turn accurately, you want less play, so I'd attach the wheels directly to the motor output and skip extra gears. Adding unnecessary gears is a perfect example of this. The more complex the solution gets, the harder it is to understand, fix, and explain. For example, with the cat, I wanted rich autonomous behavior and quickly ended up with multiple sequences of the program fighting to control the same motors or the eye expression on the display. The eyes would glitch, the sensor would become unresponsive. Even if at the end I made it to work, it would have been a mess to document and explain to kids in my online course. So I stripped it back to one clear sequence that handles everything in order. And the cat is a great example of this principle in hardware design too. From a distance, you read it instantly as a sitting cat, but look closely and it's extremely simple. The rounded legs are just wheels to suggest their volume. The rear paws are technic panels, slightly angled under the body. The tail is a flexible hose, thinner than a real cat's, and the front is basically a big flat platform, not pretty up close, but it lets me mount the pole motor, hide the touch sensor, and keep everything robust. So, never forget to keys. Keep it super simple. Now that the build is done, it's time to program it. But before you write a single line of code, there's one step most beginners tend to skip. Jumping straight into code before knowing what the robot should do is a trap.
It's a trap!
You end up struggling with how the blocks work, while you're still trying to figure out what you even want the robot to do. Two hard problems at once. So before dropping a single programming block, I write out what I want the robot to do in natural language. No code yet, just a clear sequence of actions, conditions, loops. A flowchart works too, or pseudocode if you know it. The point is to separate the what from the how. Once the what is clear, the how becomes a translation exercise. This is the single habit that most improves a beginner's code. Natural language first, code second. Now that you know what your robot should do, the next step is turning that plan into code. If your pseudocode is solid, you're not inventing anymore. For this project I used Scratch blocks, but the same approach works with icon blocks or MicroPython. Most of the work becomes what block or function matches this step. And if you want the full step-by-step method to translate pseudocode into Spike Prime blocks, that's exactly what I teach in my Spike Prime Starter course. The cat is one of the most complex projects there. Link in the description. Once you've translated your plan into code, you think you're done. You hit play, expecting the robot to move as you planned, except it doesn't. Writing code is 20% of the work. Debugging, which is fixing error in code, is the other 80%. While I was writing and testing the code for the cat, it kept behaving strangely. Always sad, always purring for attention. I couldn't figure it out, and then I found it. I forgot to set a variable at the start of the program. One missing block. That was it. And this happens to everyone. When a robot's behavior feels unpredictable, it's usually one of these. Mechanics, sensors, noisy readings, working at home and maybe failing on the competition field. Or software, variable not set properly, an if-else block with the wrong condition, a loop that never ends. So you have to track it down until it finally works. And then it's always, oh, of course, stupid me, usually with a laugh at your mistakes. And here's the mindset shift. You were taught mistakes are embarrassing or a shame to hide. In programming, they're the method. Every bug you fix becomes experience. And now that the cat is done, let me show you how it works. I wrote two programs for it. One where the cat is needy and you have to take care of it. And one that's a Bop It style minigame where the cat makes sounds and you have to react correctly before you lose. If you like what you're seeing, consider subscribing and hit like. And if you want to see what else I've built, watch this next.